Exalted is a game about demigods and their deeds, and thus the biggest part of the rulebook are the mechanics that represent this: Essence, Anima, and Charms. Charms are the crux of this entire game. They're magical effects any Exalted is able to use that causes them to alter the world around them in some way. Essence is a rating of how powerful an Exalted is, and a higher Essence means two things. There's more powerful charms they can learn, and they can store more motes of Essence. Motes of Essence, or simply motes, are the fuel for any of the powers that you have as an Exalted. Most charms your character has require spending motes, and you have two reserves of these: personal and peripheral. The formulas for determining how many motes you have in either are as follows. Personal is your Essence times 3, plus 10, and peripheral is your Essence times 7, plus 26. Motes regain at two different rates. In combat, you regain 5 motes at the end of every turn. Meanwhile, outside of battle, you regain 5 every hour. There's two separate pools for a reason. Every 5 motes spent from a character's peripheral pool cause their anima to ignite and grow brighter. An Exalted's anima is an aura that surrounds them, and more or less announces to the world that they are indeed a divine creature. Your character's anima can appear however you like, with only one stipulation: it can and will be noticed when it starts flaring up. There are 4 levels to how brightly an anima shines. Dim, which is the default resting state. It's invisible to anybody and everybody in this form. Glowing, which for Solar Exalted is usually a bright halo surrounding the character's body. While your anima is in this state, trying to be stealthy causes you to do so at a -3 dice penalty. Burning is when the Solar's anima shines so bright that it's impossible to hide. You can't make any stealth checks like this. And energy also seems to arc and ripple out from the character. Bonfire/Iconic is the most brilliant of these displays. It's visible for miles and miles. This is when angels will start singing to herald a character's passing, or even in the dead of night, they'll shine like some sort of divine beacon. It's important to note that certain charms can only be used when a character's anima is shining at a certain level. Additionally, there's a few effects that can be used by any Solar Exalted that don't rely on charms. There's 2 available to any Solar Exalted, and each only cost 1 mote to use. They can sense the presence of the sun, and thus know exactly what time of day it is, or they can cause their cast mark, a little sigil on their forehead, to shine and reveal themselves as an Exalted. Each Solar Exalted also has a few other innate abilities they can use as well, depending on their cast. When a Dawn cast's anima is at the Bonfire/Iconic level, after a successful decisive attack, they add half their essence to their initiative. Once per day, a Dawn cast can also spend 10 motes to reset all their combat and movement charms that have some sort of reset condition. And finally, the Dawn cast Exalted add half their essence to their dice pool whenever they attempt to intimidate another creature. Even more, the Dawn cast is capable of intimidating creatures that you wouldn't be able to intimidate normally, such as automatons or undead. The Zenith cast can spend 1 mote to incinerate a corpse, and ensure that its spirit will rest peacefully. Additionally, they can also perceive and gain the deceased's strongest intimacies. Afterwards, they can touch the target of those intimacies, and choose to lose those intimacies to give the subject feelings of peace regarding the deceased. They could also cause an object relating to those intimacies to instill feelings of comfort or duty. The final thing that can be done with these gained intimacies is that the Zenith cast can touch somebody who caused the deceased suffering, and make a social roll, determined by the GM, against the causer of the deceased's suffering. This roll has 3 automatic successes, and if successful, causes the target of the effect to receive the same sort of pain they caused to the deceased. Another ability that the Zenith have is that they can spend 10 motes and 1 temporary willpower when making a decisive attack against a creature of darkness. If they do, their initiative doesn't reset if the attack was successful. The cost of this ability is reduced to just 5 motes and no willpower if their anima is at the Bonfire/Iconic level. The final ability of the Zenith cast is that they can spend 7 motes to make a Charisma and Presence roll to force a spirit to materialize in the physical world. This roll has a number of automatic successes equal to the Zenith's essence. At the cost of 5 motes, a member of the Twilight cast are able to create a protective barrier that grants them a hardness of 5. If their anima is at the Bonfire/Iconic level, they can use this ability without paying its cost. For 10 motes and 1 willpower, they can cause their anima to flare blue and white, consuming them over the course of a round. At the start of the next round, they disappear from existence, and they don't reappear until the next sunset. The place they reappear is some place of power within 10 miles from where they vanished. Their last ability is that for 10 motes, when they touch an elemental or demon with an essence of 1 to 3, they can make an intelligence and occult roll against that creature's resolve. If they succeed, that creature becomes the Twilight Cast's familiar, who can be summoned at will for 3 motes. The Night Cast is able to spend 2 additional motes when using peripheral motes to treat them as if they were personal. That is, it won't cause their anima to flare up. They can also spend 3 motes to ignore stealth penalties. The amount they can ignore is the higher of 3 or their essence rating. Anytime the Night Cast uses this ability, any motes they spend are used as if they were personal, regardless of if they were actually peripheral. The final ability of the Night Cast is that when their anima is at Bonfire Iconic, their anima is wrapped around them in such a way that it obscures their figure and face. It becomes impossible to see who they are, and nothing can allow somebody to see their true form in this state. The first ability of the Eclipse Cast is if that they witness or are part of a binding agreement or oath, they can spend 10 motes and 1 willpower to sanctify it. If anybody breaks the oath or agreement, the one who breaks it becomes cursed, usually in some ironic way relating to the agreement. The Eclipse Cast also have sort of a diplomatic immunity when dealing with otherworldly creatures, and this also extends to anybody in their party. The end result of this is if they're treading into territory of a demon or other spirit on legitimate business, the lord of that domain and its inhabitants cannot harm the Eclipse Cast and their party. Unless, of course, somebody within that party starts any sort of fight. Their final ability is that Eclipse Cast Exalted are able to learn any sort of charms from other creatures if that write-up for that charm has the Eclipse keyword. And speaking of charms, as I mentioned earlier, charms make up a bulk of this game's content. They're the magical abilities that the Exalted get that makes them truly divine. The concept of charms is strictly a game abstraction. Characters in Exalted, be they Exalted or mortal, will never use the word charm when discussing an Exalted's special abilities. They don't have a specific in-universe term for what they can do. They're just an extension of their own abilities. The term charms is specifically for your convenience, as a player. So with all that said, let's actually get into how to use charms, as a player. This is what most of the write-ups for charms look like. You'll have the name of the charm at the top, with the next 2 lines being the cost to use the charm, as well as what ability minimums you need to learn it. The costs section uses a lot of shorthand to save space, with the key for what means what being listed on page 252. Here, for Phantom Seizing Strike, you can see that it costs 1 mote and 1 willpower to use this. Mins, on the other hand, is what abilities you need and what level they need to be before you can learn it. Our example requires us to have 4 dots in Occult and at least 1 point of Essence. Then we have the type of charm, which is grouped into 4 categories. Simple, which lasts for a few seconds, as if they were a combat action, and can only be used 1 at a time. Supplemental, which enhance an ordinary action, such as attacking or talking somebody into doing something. Each such charm can only be used once per action it is enhancing, but multiple supplemental charms may be used at once. Reflexive Charms, on the other hand, can be used any time it would make sense that they could be used, such as avoiding an attack, or for noticing something in the corner of a room. Permanent charms don't need to be activated. They're always being used once a character learns them. Phantom Seizing Strike is a reflexive type, so we can use it anytime it's appropriate. The description will tell you when this is. Keywords are a shorthand for specific rules that are common to most charms. The complete list of them is on page 253, and it's a bit too long for me to go over all of them. Our sample charm has the keyword Uniform, meaning it works the same way for both decisive and withering attacks. Duration is obviously how long the charm lasts, and after that is the Prerequisite Charms, which are all the charms your character needs to know before you can learn this one. While prerequisites are usually specific charms, sometimes this will also require some other unspecified type of charm. In order to learn Phantom Seizing Strike, we first need to learn Ghost Eating Technique. And last is the description of the charm, which gives us all the nice details of what it does. there's a few final rules that need to be discussed regarding using charms. First, anytime you're using a charm, you must declare that you're using it before you roll any dice. Additionally, when a charm is used in combat, attackers always declare their charms first, and afterwards the defenders declare theirs. Once the defender declares their charms, the attacker cannot say they're activating more. There is also a limit on how much a charm can raise any of your dice pools or static values. For dice pools, you cannot use charms to raise a dice pool above double what it would normally be. As an example, if you have a medicine of 3 and an intelligence of 3, you cannot use charms to raise the dice pool by more than 6 if you're rolling medicine and intelligence. For raising static values, such as defense, you can only raise it by half its normal value, rounded down. Thus, if you have a defense of 5 from a dexterity of 3 and a dodge of 2, you can only use charms to raise your defense by another 2. Specialties do not affect any of these limits, and if a charm adds to the amount of successes earned, count those successes as if they were 2 dice added to the dice pool of that roll. The last things regarding charms I want to discuss are Excellencies. These are sort of a generic charm that quite simply make you excellent in a particular ability. The way they work is you spend 1 mode of Essence to grant an additional die to a particular roll, or 2 to raise a static value by 1 if the ability the Excellency is 4 factors into that static value, like a Dodge Excellency increasing defense. Excellencies are still charms, so you're still beholden to the limits of raising dice pools and static values when using them. They're inefficient compared to other charms, but you gain them for free for each of your cast and favorite abilities you have at least 1 dot in, as well as any other ability you have at least 1 charm for. The final thing to note about Excellencies is that they don't count as a known charm when counting up unspecified charms as prerequisites for other charms. That's all I have to say for Charms in Exalted 3rd Edition for the time being. They kind of build off of everything else, so you need to know the basic rules before you can really go all out with them. And everything I covered here is also just the rules for Solar Exalted Charms. I'll cover the other Exalted as their books come out later though. So, with all that said, I am Aaron Shadle, and I will see you all next time. Thanks for watching. If this was helpful to you, it'd be excellent if you could click that like button for me. You could also click the subscribe button if you want to keep track of me and when I release videos for the other Exalted books. A game as big as this is daunting, but if you take it one part at a time, I know you'll do fine. Just remember, videos on the internet are never a replacement for reading your rulebook.